Hello everybody and welcome to today's board game review and gameplay demo for Stuffed Fables. This is a unique adventure book game where the idea is that everybody at the table is playing as a stuffed animal who is trying to protect their child from all of the evils that are lurking in the night. It plays from 2 to 4 people in about 60 to 90 minutes per session, but the thing is it's very easy to get caught up in the story and just keep on playing. It has some really nice RPG elements to it with some dice rolling, tactical movement, and all of that kind of stuff that you expect to see in an adventure style game, but it's come down enough so that it's really designed for kids. You can play this with kids that are 7 or older, and of course they will really love the theme for the whole thing. But with that, we're going to dive right in and start talking about what this game is similar to. As far as similarities are concerned, there was one that I really wanted to mention, and that is Mice and Mystics. Both of these games are really heavy on the adventure theme. You've got a lot of RPG elements to them, and you also have this sort of fantastical kind of whimsical story behind them, where in Mice and Mystics, everybody's been turned to mice, and you have to go and you have to fight through the castle, whereas in Stuffed Fables, everybody is playing as a stuffed animal trying to protect their child from everything that's happening in the night. You see a lot of very similar elements, but I personally like the way that Stuffed Fables is presented a little bit more because it's more catered to kids, and on top of that, having the sort of storybook mechanic is really cool and makes for a much more fun environment essentially as you're playing. But with that, we're going to dive right into how to play Stuffed Fables. Before I get into the game, let me say this real quick, is that my girlfriend and I are in the middle of a game, so this is kind of a hybrid where we've got some of the stuff that we've earned, but I've rolled back as much as I can to show you guys the general setup and how the game actually starts off. So the first and foremost biggest thing that we need is this, the Stuffed Fables adventure book. And this will act as both our board as well as our instructions for the individual scenarios as we're going through, and I'll show you a few of those as I go through this demo. This represents the threat track as well as the group track, the group effort track that we'll talk about later on. In addition to that, everybody is going to pick their character. That's the first step. In this case, I've got Stitch and Lumpy, where you start out, you grab the character sheet and you grab 5 stuffing. We also have our item cards, we have our lost cards, our sleeping cards, and then our various status cards over here. In addition, we will have our minion deck, which represents the bad guys that we'll be fighting. You also have your discovery decks. So there's going to be story 1, 2, and 3 decks. Assuming that you start from the beginning, you'll start off with story 1 and you don't mess with the order or anything along those lines. But that's pretty much it. After you get all that set up, we're ready to play. Just have the tokens out here and available, put all of the dice in the bag, minions and various minis all available. What you do now is you essentially start off with the bookkeeper. So the first bookkeeper will open up the book to the big girl bed, and then you just read over what you need to read. The great thing about this book and the way the game progresses is that it's literally a page turner. After we go through this, then we immediately enter into our first scenario and our first map. The way that the combat and everything works in this game is very simple. Everything is explained in the text on this side of the book, and then we have the actual map and the locations that we're able to go to on the other side of the book. So for example, all of the characters will start on the little paws in some way or adjacent to the paws. And then the bad guys, if there are any, will start wherever they're said to start. In this particular case, they will start up over here. And then again, the bookkeeper will read off whatever's going on. We collect the initial items that we get, and then we just sort of jump right in. So the page itself and the way that this works is fairly simple. On the page, you'll see a lot of information regarding how this particular board works. So we'll have information such as how difficult it is to search, where we're able to search, and then we'll also have icons indicating where the lost are, which is this particular thing. That will be sort of a miniature quest to try to fulfill. We'll also have points of interest that we can go and look through and try to figure out what's going on. Some of the key things is that you're not allowed to go across solid white lines, and in order to go across the green lines, then you need extra movement. But just a few minor things like that, very easy to keep track of. When it comes to encounters and how to deal with those, we've got again our minion deck, which will be just the little guys. Shuffle it up and draw however many are necessary for that particular encounter. Jumping right into the player turn, turn. It's a pretty simple phased based turn like you see many times. Draw dice, get fluff, place threat, perform actions, discard any dice, and then check the threat. So the threat is this track right here, and that represents how likely it is that the monsters will either attack and or simply get a turn, depending on if they're already on the board or not. And essentially you'll fill it out with black dice as you go down, just like that. The fluff dice, which are the white dice, will just represent you getting more fluff. That's essentially how you heal throughout the game. So the first thing that you do is draw dice. You just take 5 dice randomly from the bag. All right, just like that. And then what you'll do is you'll take your white dice, roll those first, and get that many fluff, if you're able to, and then you discard it. After that, you take your threat dice, put them on there. Now you perform actions. There are several actions you can do, and some of them require specific colors of dice, others do not. If you look on the back of the cards, then you'll see you've got red, green, yellow, blue, and purple. Those are your action dice that allow you to do different things. The universal actions are going to be moving, reserving dice, encouraging, performing skill tests, or the group tasks. So moving, obviously very simple. You take however many of the same colored dice you want, you roll them, and then you move that many spaces. So I can say I'll take 1 red die and I move 3. 1, 2, 3. You can move orthogonally, diagonally, however you wish. Reserving a dice, you put it on your card so that you can use it later for some other purpose if you want to. You can encourage somebody else, which means you give them a die that they can put in reserve. You can perform a skill test of whatever the matching color is. So the skill test is going to be your unique action. For example, red is like strength, and then green is agility, yellow perception, blue resistance, and purple acts as anything. The other thing is you can contribute to the group tasks. So again, group tasks specific to the scenarios, depends on what it is. Last but not least is this is how you attack as well. If you have a bad guy on the board, then you can go and you can attack them. In this case with Stitch, I have a meat mallet. That is one of the things I started with. This gives me a bonus when I perform a melee attack, and I get 1 to my red dice results. So if I'm adjacent to this bad guy, I would roll my red dice and be like, boom, just like that. And so after that, I have rolled a total of 9, and then +1 for each red die, so that's 9, 10, and 11 for those guys. So then I would look at this, see if I hit, and in this case I needed a 5 or more, which means that I hit, and so I would be like blah, 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 blah. Just like that. Super simple. That is the melee attack with the red. You also have ranged attack, green. Search is yellow. The search just represents you're on any sort of location that is not special. You look at what your search requirement is, in this case 4. I roll, I only got a 1, my search is unsuccessful. If you're successful at search, then that means that you get to draw items. It's the most common way of getting items in the game. Next up is the blue. That doesn't have a particular action associated with it, and then purple can act as any of those the attack or search actions. You're allowed to put them on it. As far as the items are concerned, you have 4 slots where you've got the head, the body, the paws, and the accessory, very similarly to most RPG style games like this, right? Last but not least, when you are attacking bosses, so these will be the named characters. I will show you these guys. For example, Knuckle and Darkheart are the ones from the first one, so shh, don't tell anybody, spoilers. The idea is that after you're able to hit them, then they essentially lose some of their stuffing. So on the stuffings, you'll have the white side, and show you a little better, and then you have the dark side. The bad guys have the dark side stuffing, and they'll essentially just lose the stuffing. It's kind of like having multiple health bars on the bad guy. After you defeat a bad guy, you'll get a button. If you defeat a boss, you get a heart. Buttons are used as currency to visit a store so that you can purchase items. The hearts are used to utilize your special abilities, which will represent getting new dice, automatically succeeding at particular types of checks, all sorts of other different stuff like that. Last but not least, on the turn, you check the threat. If you have threat dice equal to the number of stuffies on the board, then something will occur. Generally, it means that the enemies take an action. Sometimes it means that you'll have what's called a surge. The surge will be whatever the scenario says that it is. It can be enemies coming out, it can be a particular event happening, it can be any number of things. The way that it goes with that is pretty simple. The bad guys, they have a move, they roll, they move, they target, and they attack. right? So when they roll, you take one of the threat dice and you roll it for whichever one that you're going first on. And in this case, I rolled a 5. If we notice on the card, this will say if you roll a 1 to 3, you do a rush. If you do a 4 to 6, you do a clickety. So in this case, the clickety is a melee attack, and after the crawly attacks, move it 3 spaces towards the closest little screw and nut place. So the idea is that it goes tick, 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 pow, tick, 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 and then it goes back. So they have very simple move mechanics where it's things along the lines of if they're next to somebody, they don't move, or they move to the closest and attack, whatever it happens to be. It's pretty simple to go by, and the cards are fairly self-explanatory as far as what they can and can't do. You'll get status cards all throughout, so these are the status cards, and they can be good or bad depending on when and why you get them. We've also got the sleeping cards, which again, depending on the scenario, will affect the outcome potentially. And that's pretty much it though. As you go through the game, then you'll just see different things come up. You can see there's a lot of scenarios, there's a lot of different things that you're going through. In part, it's a choose your own adventure where you can go through door A or B, and the book will tell you exactly where to go. Like I said, a literal page turner to go to the next different scenarios as you go. And again, I know I'm spoiling it a little bit, but hopefully you guys don't mind too much. Well, overall, that's pretty much it. That's all the major rules for how to play Stuffed Fables. But now we'll just jump right into overall what I think about Stuffed Fables. After everything's been said, I really enjoyed Stuffed Fables. This is a well-designed game, and I love the fact that it really caters towards children. This is a big issue that a lot of parent gamers have, where they want to play games, but they either can't play with the kids, or they can't find time to play by themselves, whatever it happens to be. So with this game being designed with kids in mind and the idea of stuffed animals protecting you, it's something that kids can understand immediately, not to mention really appreciate seeing in a game. On top of that, the actual storybook mechanic is wonderfully unique, and I absolutely love it. And that's why I said at the beginning, it's really easy to just keep on going through it and just not stop ever. It's also great because it can show kids the idea of consequences of either action or inaction, being able to get to something or not get to something, and you can see that the story is able to change depending on what occurs. That said, it's of course not a flawless game. Like any adventure game, after you've played through the story once, then it's like, okay, well, I know what's going to happen, at least approximately. And so yes, the mechanics are good enough that it warrants a few other playthroughs, but at the same time, you still know overall what's going to be going on. The mechanics themselves, in general, I like. The fact that you've got a ton of dice rolling, I'm not a huge fan of. It does a decent job of mitigating some of it, and I do like the whole sort of kind of pressing your luck, and like you're seeing that the bad guys are going to be coming soon because you haven't seen a lot of those black dice yet, and all of that kind of thing. But that said, the tactical aspect of it is really well done. Like I said, a good balance between keeping it interesting for parents as well as making it simple enough for kids to understand. The different characters are really cool. The fact that they've got unique powers that you can access are very interesting. And overall, it's just a well-designed game with a few flaws, but that said, if you guys are a fan of adventure games in general, if you're a fan of the theme, the art, whatever it happens to be, certainly give it a try, at the very least to see that adventure book mechanic in action. It's a really cool thing. But if you're not into the adventure games, the roll and move, the RPG style thing, it's probably not something for you. But regardless, thank you very, very much for watching. And as always, if you guys haven't done so already, you can please take a look at my various social media pages and also my Patreon page, where you can interact with myself, my channel, see videos, and do all sorts of other cool stuff whenever you want. And on top of that, please let me know any and everything that you guys think about this game in the comments below. Do you think it's an interesting theme? Do you want to have more games that are designed like this? Do you like the adventure book idea? Anything along that, I would love to hear what you guys have to say. But with that, thank you again very much for watching, and I will see you next time.